there's supply, there's sort of like drivers, there's demand, customers, and there's like a network of roads that drivers just have to um, traverse and get to their, and supply and demand gets connected. In reality, though, the urban space of Jakarta is infused with so many hurdles and social relationships, and each neighborhood has sort of its own dynamic. Even something like where drivers can pick up customers from is determined by these local agreements that they've had with the OJEC OJEC Pangkalan drivers. So they're locally called OPANG, the traditional offline motorbike taxi drivers. Um, the platform drivers and the offline drivers have had these agreements where they've created red zones. So within 500 meters of this train station, online drivers will not pick up customers, and this was a way of resolving some of the violence and tensions and conflict that had emerged once the platforms had disrupted this existing motorbike taxi industry. Now, of course, the platform does not necessarily look at red zones when they're doing matching. So the drivers would have to call up the customers and say, hey, can you move like 50 steps to your left because you're actually in a spot where I can't pick you up from. Then there's even stuff around what would be the most efficient route to take, for example. Now, the algorithm, of course, or like Google Maps, which is usually used for Go-Jek's routing system. Go-Jek, Google Maps makes certain assumptions about what is a passable street and and that determines what the most efficient route is. But there are lots of like local shortcuts and very small streets that go through informal settlements or through kampungs that are actually not mapped. Now Google Maps is increasingly becoming better and better and better, but like 3 years ago, those that didn't exist. Assumptions of how quickly routes and neighborhoods change in a mega city of the global south like Jakarta that's constantly under construction in new places. It's constantly expanding and new spaces are constantly coming up and new roads are coming up, and sometimes the road is blocked and sometimes the traffic signal is broken. So there are kind of these like hyper local parameters that Google Maps doesn't take into account, but drivers have to, because their job is literally dependent on them getting from point A to point B as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So they are like incentivized to use their knowledge to make the platform more efficient. So it's funny that the platforms keep talking about their efficiency, but their efficiency is really just dependent on the labor of drivers. And there's like a bunch of other stuff, things like when you match a driver to a food order in a mall, is there space for the driver to have to park? The realities of delivering food in Jakarta isn't just that you're constraint free, you can go to any restaurant, pick up frictionless do a frictionless pickup of an order and find your customer. Like if I get to a restaurant, where would I park? Malls in Jakarta are humongous. It takes very long to navigate malls if you don't really understand what the layout of the mall is, and there's no navigation system there. So drivers have really kind of figured out, okay, like if I am going to this mall, like the official motorbike taxi parking is very far away from the restaurants. So if I sort of leave my motorbike in the care of this group of motorbike taxi drivers that hangs out right outside the mall, I can actually get to the mall quicker. They figured out ways like of having mall experts, so someone who actually stays in the mall and gets the food and just comes out and gives it to them. And all of these are ways of ameliorating some of these frictions that come out, because algorithms assume a very particular view of urban space and the world, which actually doesn't map on to drivers' lived experiences.